Despite the economic hardship, let's go to Edo State now and tell you that the House of Assembly has suspended the chairman and vice chairman of all 18 local government areas for 2 months over alleged gross misconduct and insubordination. Well, that's not just all. The decision, which was adopted during Tuesday's plenary, followed a petition by Governor Monday Okpebolo accusing the council officials of refusing to submit financial records since September 2022. The Assembly's motion, initiated by Honorable Isibo Ede and seconded by Honorable Donald Okogbe, passed with 14 votes in favor, despite opposition from some lawmakers who urged a fair hearing. The Assembly cited Section 20, that's Section 20B, I beg your pardon, of the Local Government Act as the basis for the suspension. However, let's also tell you that the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, ALGON, rejected the directive, referencing a state court ruling and a Supreme Court judgment affirming local government autonomy. Similarly, the PDP condemned the suspension, calling it unconstitutional. Well, PDP State Chairman Tony Azegbemi urged the officials to resume duties, arguing the Assembly lacked authority to suspend elected council leaders and warning of federal intervention if the decision persists. Well, joining us now here on Breakfast Central is former Commissioner for Communication and Orientation in Edo State, Andrew Nwanta, who actually is in a meeting now, but has taken time out from that meeting to ensure that he joins us to have this conversation. Well, thank you for doing that. Very commendable. Thank you so much. Well, let's look at what's really happening in Edo State now.
Good morning.
All right, good morning. 18 local government chairmen suspended. Why have they been suspended? Let's start off from that note so that our viewers can actually get the background of this story.
Thank you. Upon assumption of office, the governor had set up an assets verification committee, and that committee had a mandate of looking at all state-owned assets, including that of local governments. And just to correct a misconception, the issue of financial autonomy is different from the issue of fiscal responsibility or accountability. You know, people keep making reference to a Supreme Court decision that sort of guarantees financial autonomy for local government. What that means is that local government should get their funds directly. That is not to say the control provided for under the Constitution by the states over the affairs of local government remains. Section 7 of the Constitution is very clear that the State House of Assembly has a duty of making a law for the existence, management, and control of local governments. That provision of the law has not been amended. So it was pursuant to that particular law, the Edo State local government law was made. And there was a recent request by the governor that the chairman of the 18 local governments should submit their statements of accounts. A time limit was given, and unfortunately they refused to, but rather they now said they will resort to court to challenge the authority of the state government to ask for those statements. And you can imagine a situation where you have local government chairmen, they are busy using local government funds to do certain things that are not in conformity with specific guidelines and financial regulations. So that the suspension, of course, is backed by law. Section 20 of the local government law is clear that the governor, in consultation of the House of Assembly, can suspend any area local government chairman or vice chairman, as the case may be. Remember that this is not the first time under the regime of Comrade Adams Oshomole, over 5 local government chairmen were suspended. Even the recent administration of Obaseki, in 2019 alone, 4 local government chairmen were suspended for 2 months. So you have a clear history of the provision of Section 20 being followed, and this particular instance is not an exception. And the law requires the governor to set up a panel of inquiry, an administrative panel of inquiry, and by virtue of being the special advisor to the governor on legal matters, I'm a member of that panel of inquiry. We were inaugurated yesterday, and we assure those chairmen and all those in the local government administration that we'll be giving fair hearing. We want to know how internally generated revenue they generate in their respective councils are spent, because these are public funds. I want to know how allocations that come to these local governments have been spent since they came in September last year.
But they look, okay, go on.
Okay, just to double check, I mean, you've talked about how the governor and the state government has a right to ask the local government to submit, you know, to share how they've used funds. There are those who have argued that this is sort of similar to the president asking the state governors to come and give account of how they've spent money. Is that, is that a position that you agree with?
Thank you. I think I must quickly say that as a constitutional lawyer, we tend to treat local governments in a gap they don't really enjoy under the Constitution. The Constitution is clear on the authority of a state government to sort of supervise the activities of local government. And that is why under certain provisions, you have provisions on joint account and all of that, that the state superintends. And that's why you have a commissioner responsible for local government and chieftaincy matters. The states, as it were, are regional governments. And it is a global phenomenon. Even in the US, we practice a democratic system that is modeled on that of the United States of America. And the states in that particular climate control what happens at the various local government levels. And that is why, in our own case, Section 20 of the local government law, which was made pursuant to the provisions of Section 7 of the Constitution, gives the state the authority to inquire into the activities of any area local government council chairman or vice. And in that instance, the local government chairman is suspended not to interfere with that inquiry. So it is in line with the provisions of our Constitution, and it is in line with the provisions of the Edo State local government law, which remains the extant law as we speak.
Okay, let's tilt a bit to what the PDP members are saying. They're saying that the governor, Monday Okpebolo, Senator Monday Okpebolo, lacks the jurisdiction to indeed ask for financial accounts, especially following the Supreme Court's order, or better still, the Supreme Court's judgment granting autonomy to the local government chairman. So it's like they're saying, why is he asking for such? That, again, it seems to look like a witch hunt, looking at the fact that some members in the State House of Assembly did not agree to that suspension.
When you talk of a witch hunt, the Speaker of the House of Assembly is a PDP lawmaker. And I can tell you that a good number of PDP lawmakers supported that motion. You had 14 against 6. We serve our people, and the majority of our people are the ones that are represented in the House of Assembly. So if 14 constituencies have a position, I think that is a majority. And the beauty of a democratic system is that the minority will have their say.
Okay.
And the majority will have their way. And that's what exactly played out. And just also correct that erroneous impression, the Supreme Court decision does not abrogate the powers of state governors or the state government to supervise the activities of local government councils. And besides, the constitutional provision remains sacrosanct. The Supreme Court does not have the authority to amend the Constitution, but theirs is to give life to it by interpreting specific provisions. And for the provision body, and they have a particular period, if, for instance, you were to suspend or dissolve that board, there are certain benefits that will follow. And normally the practice has shown that you go to courts to ask the court to grant you those privileges and perquisites of office. So for those whose boards have been dissolved, they know what to do. But this is a new administration. The governor deserves to have his own appointees come on board. It did not happen today. During the time of Buhari, we saw it. Under the present administration of Tinubu, we saw it. So for anybody that is aggrieved, they have a place they can ventilate their grievance. But as it stands, for some of those commissions, like the Oil and Gas Commission, was resolved. We didn't have a board. Obaseki ran the Oil and Gas Commission for over a year without a board. And as a member of the Edo State Assets Verification Committee, I can tell you that the level of malfeasance, the last time we saw that was during the time of Abacha, the ill-fated regime of Abacha. And coming back to the issue of vehicles, the Vehicle Recovery Committee said from their records, 21 vehicles are being kept by the PDP candidate, Aswe Gudalo, and they have called on him to return those vehicles. His running mates, 7 vehicles were recovered from his premises. The chief of staff has 7 vehicles. The other day, they recovered 2 from him. Why would people occupy government office? You have that huge number of vehicles, and after your term of office expires, you go with those vehicles. That for me is criminal. And it is what Nigerians must condemn in the strongest of terms.
Okay. Now, the PDP, of course, has reacted to this. They've called this unconstitutional. And, the governor is still in the early stages of doing, like Joe said, a clean sweep. One of the criticisms, that have been leveled against him as well was the budget presentation. I'm sure that you saw the clip that went viral. Initially, they said it was a mistake, and then later it was doctored. And his aide, one of his aides, had spoken and said anyone who doesn't like it can go to hell. I want to believe those. Joe, correct me if those weren't the exact words
Absolutely.
that he said.
Absolutely.
But share your thoughts on that. The clip that went viral, the issues that arose as a result of that, and your thoughts about the 2025 budget of the 605 billion budget.
And I can tell you for free that there's nobody on earth that has not made one mistake in figures or the other. He read that speech very well. And it's a former American president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, that said, and I quote, "An error does not become a mistake unless we refuse to correct it." Yes, he had a slip and he corrected himself. And it is only when he failed to correct himself, that is when it should have been a mistake. And as such, we should not be so conscious about the form. We should be concerned about the substance. This is a man that has devoted so much resources to capital projects, 162 billion. If you compare that with the 62 billion of the 2024 budget, you will know that Edo is in for something very big. It started off by flagging off the first ever flyover at Ramat Park because of a traffic logjam. Look at across the sector, 63 billion to health. The state health insurance scheme will get a huge amount of 1.8 billion so that Edo people can have access to health. Education, of course, will be getting a lion's share, 48 billion. Of that amount, the Edo State University, that's Ambrosale University, will get its monthly subvention at 500 million and a total of 6 billion in the 2025 budget. Compare that with what Obaseki was giving them, 41 million, and that money was not coming. So the arrears of salaries of these lecturers, over 20 of them, I mean, a good number of them were suspended. The governor reinstated them, and some of them are being owed salaries for over 20 months. This is a governor that assures Edo people that his mantra, "A new Edo is riding," is real, and we're already seeing clear evidences of it.
Well, let me also ask, because it seems like I mean, you've talked about your boss, and we've also seen another boss. I'm talking about the former deputy governor, Philip Shaibu, who seems to have been quiet. It would be recalled that a few weeks ago, Philip Shaibu had led the call to give about 1 million naira to anyone who is able to actually bring about information on looting by the former governor. I'm talking about his former boss. Has there been anyone who's come forward to point or talk about looting by the former administration?
Yeah, thank you. I think he said that just to encourage whistleblowers. And I can tell you for free that all the vehicles recovered from the administration, the body, and they have a particular period. If, for instance, you were to suspend or dissolve that board, there are certain benefits that will follow. And normally the practice has shown that you go to courts to ask the court to grant you those privileges and perquisites of office. So for those whose boards have been dissolved, they know what to do. But this is a new administration. The governor deserves to have his own appointees come on board. It did not happen today. During the time of Buhari, we saw it. Under the present administration of Tinubu, we saw it. So for anybody that is aggrieved, they have a place they can ventilate their grievance. But as it stands, for some of those commissions, like the Oil and Gas Commission, was resolved. We didn't have a board. Obaseki ran the Oil and Gas Commission for over a year without a board. And as a member of the Edo State Assets Verification Committee, I can tell you that the level of malfeasance, I mean, the last time we saw that was during the time of Abacha, I mean, the ill-fated regime of Abacha. And coming back to the issue of vehicles, the Vehicle Recovery Committee said from their records, 21 vehicles are being kept by the PDP candidate, Aswe Gudalo, and they have called on him to return those vehicles. His running mates, 7 vehicles were recovered from his premises. The Chief of Staff has 7 vehicles. The other day, they recovered 2 from him. I mean, why would people occupy government office? You have that huge number of vehicles, and after your term of office expires, you go with those vehicles. I mean, that for me is criminal. And it is what Nigerians must condemn in the strongest of terms.
Okay. Now, the PDP, of course, has reacted to this. They've called this unconstitutional. And, the governor is still in the early stages of doing, like Joe said, a clean sweep. One of the criticisms, that have been leveled against him as well was the budget presentation. I'm sure that you saw the clip that went viral. Initially, they said it was a mistake, and then later it was doctored. And his aide, one of his aides, had spoken and said anyone who doesn't like it can go to hell. I want to believe those. Joe, correct me if those weren't the exact words
Absolutely.
that he said.
Absolutely.
But share your thoughts on that. The clip that went viral, the issues that arose as a result of that, and your thoughts about the 2025 budget of the 605 billion budget.
And I can tell you for free that there's nobody on earth that has not made one mistake in figures or the other. He read that speech very well. And it's a former American president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, that said, and I quote, "An error does not become a mistake unless we refuse to correct it." Yes, he had a slip and he corrected himself. And it is only when he failed to correct himself, that is when it should have been a mistake. And as such, we should not be so conscious about the form. We should be concerned about the substance. This is a man that has devoted so much resources to capital projects, 162 billion. If you compare that with the 62 billion of the 2024 budget, you will know that Edo is in for something very big. It started off by flagging off the first ever flyover at Ramat Park because of a traffic logjam. Look at across the sector, 63 billion to health. The state health insurance scheme will get a huge amount of 1.8 billion so that Edo people can have access to health. Education, of course, will be getting a lion's share, 48 billion. Of that amount, the Edo State University, that's Ambrosale University, will get its monthly subvention at 500 million and a total of 6 billion in the 2025 budget. Compare that with what Obaseki was giving them, 41 million, and that money was not coming. So the arrears of salaries of these lecturers, over 20 of them, I mean, a good number of them were suspended. The governor reinstated them, and some of them are being owed salaries for over 20 months. This is a governor that assures Edo people that his mantra, "A new Edo is riding," is real, and we're already seeing clear evidences of it.
Well, let me also ask, because it seems like I mean, you've talked about your boss, and we've also seen another boss. I'm talking about the former deputy governor, Philip Shaibu, who seems to have been quiet. It would be recalled that a few weeks ago, Philip Shaibu had led the call to give about 1 million naira to anyone who is able to actually bring about information on looting by the former governor. I'm talking about his former boss. Has there been anyone who's come forward to point or talk about looting by the former administration?
Yeah, thank you. I think he said that just to encourage whistleblowers. And I can tell you for free that all the vehicles recovered from the administration, the immediate past administration, were the efforts made by people who knew where these vehicles were, because we even had situations.
Okay. Well, we seem to have a little network glitch there. Well, Andrew Nwata, we look forward to hearing from you, because we recall the former deputy governor had said he was willing to give 1 million naira to anyone who had any information about any form of theft, stealing, and so on by his former boss's administration. But Towa is here with us. He's also a lawyer. He joins us all the way from the UK. Let me ask very quickly. I'm sure you've been following closely and you've listened to an entire conversation we've had with a member of the team there in Edo State. Can you shed more light on what's really happening from a lawyer's perspective, where you have 18 local council chairmen, a crime blue murder because they were not given opportunity to defend themselves, and they're not willing to even open their files to show what monies or accounts have been used for?
And the question you should, I think what should be of concern is whether the request made by the Edo State governor is constitutional. Remember, we practice federalism, and the federalism to be practiced is one: we have the federal, we have the state, we have the local government. Though the Constitution, by virtue of Section 7 of the Constitution, give independence, political structure to the local government, when it explicitly stated that no local government no local government council cannot be run by unelected executive. So that is an independent arm of government, independent structure of government. So for the governor to have called for the books, accounts of the local government in Edo State is an aberration of the constitution, an overstep of his constitutional powers, and even that of the local government, even that of the State House of Assembly. Let's not forget that the local government has the councillor, which is the legislative arm of the local government, which is headed by councillors from various wards that looks at the activities of the local government and also create a bylaw. Then another thing again we should ask is that is the local government an appointees or appointee of the state governor? The answer is no. They are elected, and their tenures are explicitly stated by law. And as a matter of fact, what they normally do, they take advantage of the silent provision of the constitution as to the tenure of local government. But let's assume that the State House of Assembly make law as to the period in which the local government chairman ought to stay. They ought not to be sacked except an election is conducted. So this is something that is worrisome to anybody who love democracy. You see, and let's look at it from this perspective. Under this current administration, led by the federal government administration, led by APC, they secured a landslide Supreme Court judgment, which guarantee autonomy, financial autonomy and rest, which the provision of the Constitution was explicitly interpreted by the Supreme Court. Now, the first point of the first accident of that judgment is led by an APC governor. Let's look at it. This is an insult to our Constitution, and this is ridicule of the decision of the Supreme Court.
We seem to have a lot of problem right now, especially. How do you think we can actually enrich our jurisprudence? Because what we're seeing here is a complete, maybe misinterpretation of what the law should be. That's why when our guest joined initially, we had told him to go ahead and explain what really happened and also looking at it from the face or the eye of the law. Now, you've come to say that no, it shouldn't be that way because, I mean, these elected local government chairmen are not appointees of the government. But then again, let me allow Olive. I'm sure she has a question.
Yeah, I just want to, follow up, piggyback on what you've said. Our guest, who is still here, I believe, Mr. Andrew, had talked about, he had made reference to Section 7 of the Constitution, talking about the local government and its powers and the powers of state government. And then he did say that the Supreme Court judgment in July that everyone is making reference to only talks about financial autonomy of the local government, but that it doesn't guarantee that the local government is totally independent of the state, as the state should be able to oversee the affairs of the local government. I'm going to allow Mr. Nwata to speak, but I want you to please respond to that first. Okay.
First of all, you see, the first casualty of every battle is the truth. And when politics is mixed with law, or when the judiciary whines with politicians, you see the ridicule of interpretation of their judgment. And that is what we are facing now in Nigeria. The first question you ask whoever makes such an assertion, or the assertion that was said, is what is the status of Section 7 of the Constitution? Then two, under which provision of the law does a state governor has the power to dissolve a local government chairman? Do you understand? Well, they can lie under the provision of the law that it is the duty of the State House of Assembly. Do you understand? The duty of the State House of Assembly to make law, that is to govern the state. The state in quotes. It's just like you telling the state, the National House of Assembly to make law to impeach or to dissolve a state governor. I think that is not the spirit or the provision of the law, and that is not what the Constitution says. If you have read the Constitution, you should know that there are sections of the law that the courts or the Attorney General requested the courts to interpret. And Section 7 of it is one of them. And also, autonomy, financial autonomy. Why should a state governor ask a local government chairman or chairman to bring a bank statement. He has no power. It's not even within his rights. The councillors are there. In short, as a matter of fact, if you look at it, whatever activity of a local government is within the confines of the local government. And if there's any issues, what the state government could do politically is to influence the removal of the local government chairman, not to dissolve and also appoint the local government chairman. It's an aberration of the Constitution and also an affront of the Supreme Court I've also referred to. And I think it should guide me through, because it should guide me through the provision of the law.
All right, Mr. Nwanta is here. I'm sure that he can, respond to that. Let's have him speak.
He can guide us through.
I think my learned friend there is a bit ambitious, and I'll say the reason why I think he's a bit ambitious. He has not studied the Edo State local government law. As lawyers, we don't come on TV to speak on what we have knowledge, what we don't have knowledge of. And the worst thing that will happen to a lawyer is when you exhibit ignorance of the law. Section 7 empowers the State House of Assembly to make laws for the existence, 1, control and management of local government councils. That provision of the Constitution has not been amended. And it was pursuant to that particular law in 2000, the Edo State local government law was made. If I ask him there, he has not studied this law. It is that law that empowers a governor in consultation with the House of Assembly, by virtue of the powers they have under Section 7, to suspend an any local government chairman. So for him to refer to councillors, yes, there's also a provision on how the local government councillors can also activate the removal of a chairman. That is different. And he was referring to, there's nothing like National House of Assembly. We have a National Assembly made up of the Senate and the House of Reps. He referred to a landslide judgment of the Supreme Court. It's a landmark decision, and that decision is on financial autonomy. So I appeal to him, he should take his time, study the Edo State local government law before he comes on TV to misinform the public. The government acted based on the rule of law. What is the rule of law? Section 20 is very clear that once you have a situation where there's a case of malfeasance or insubordination, the government has a power in consultation, which he did yesterday with the House of Assembly, to suspend. There are precedents. Obaseki, the immediate past PDP governor, suspended 4 local governments, including the local government chairman of my local government, in line with that same law. So what has changed?
Before Mr. Osaruoja responds, I still want to follow up with you, Mr. Nwanta. Algon has said that there is a High Court ruling that sets aside the local government law that you make reference to in Edo State. Can you please confirm or deny this?
There's no law like, I'm not aware of any court order. If they have, they should bring it, but that remains the law of the state. There's nothing like that. They are just trying to be funny. If they have issues, they should go to court. The government acted according to the law, and if they have grievances, they should go to court.
All right, let's have Mr. Osaruoja have his right of response as well.
It's okay. First of all, I think I don't want to throw tantrums to personalities on air. But one thing I want to draw the attention of my colleague there is the fact that if you look at this provision of Section 7, subsection 6, paragraph B of the Constitution is referring to, has to do with allocation of public funds, and that allocation has to do with the joint account, the money generated, internally generated from the Edo State coffers. Do you understand how those money will be allocated and shared within the local government? Then let me come back to the elementary of law, and any lawyer and even any politicians hold this at its tip, that the supremacy of the Constitution supersedes state law. And when there is a conflict between the provision of the Constitution and a state law, the state law bars to what the provision of the Constitution. So if Edo State law, as he is referring to, gives the governor the power to dissolve, which I believe he should make that law available to the public to read. And I believe that law, even if that law exists, it contravenes the provision, which is Section 1 of the Constitution that talks about the supremacy, and also contravenes Section 7, which categorically stated that the local government will be run by a democratically elected individual within the topography of that local government. Then for that section is trying to say, okay, make law for the... No. under Section 7 has to do with allocation of public fund. And that allocation of public fund, let me educate him, or let's educate the public, is for the money generated, just like we have the revenue pool of the federation, whereby money is shared between the federal, the state, and the local government. So that provision gives the State House of Assembly not to make law as to the revenue generated, the internal generated revenue of the local government, but internally generated revenue of the state that goes to the pool for distribution to the local government under the provision of the law.
All right.
What are we saying?
So
what are we saying? So I believe that I think with what is just expressed now by the aides of the governor or people who are close to the governor, we should pardon the governor of his ignorance, but we should not also pardon or overlook the ignorance of legal officers or lawyers who are attached to the governor. And I think in UK, people of this people who find themselves caught between politics and professionalism will be sanctioned and sometimes possibly lose their license.
Okay. I think that we can, there's obviously a disagreement here on both parties, and maybe the final place or the final body to decide this will be the court. That would be the final place. But let's get your thoughts on what the next steps are. I'll take your response, Mr. Roger, and then we'll come to Mr. Nwata as well. So what do you think the next steps are? Toro, you think that there is obviously a wrong done here. You believe that this is an aberration. What should be the next step?
I think the next step should be they should approach the court. And at the same time, I think the regulatory body ought to, for me, the regulatory body in Nigeria, particularly the Nigerian Bar Association, and the Supreme Court should come, and courts should come heavily on individuals who decide to ignore a laid down procedure or who decide to ignore already existing judgment. That is why the court is overclotted. And let me even take us through the memory lane. If you notice, it's not even, we're not only referring to the Supreme Court judgment. They are pictorial of authority. I'm not lawyers to any of them for me to start citing authority. But if time allows me, I will cite pictorials of authority where the Supreme Court said that the state governor or the State House of Assembly lacks the power to dissolve a local government chairman. But let them approach the court and see, just like it's a time play, after all, by the time they approach the court, by the time adjournments are delayed, 2 years are gone. But let's say something that injustice to one is injustice to the other. PDP did it in Rivers State. Now PDP is getting it in Edo State. But one thing we should know, that the people of Edo State and the people from those local governments who benefit from a laid-down structure will be the suffering cow. All
right. Thank you for your thoughts. And now let's hear from Mr. Nwata. What would you think the next step should be?
Thank you. Just to correct a very erroneous impression, it was not a case of dissolution. When people come on TV to talk, they should always have their facts, particularly when you are a lawyer. It was a case of suspension, not dissolution. And I think our viewers deserve to know what actually transpired. I asked a simple question: has he studied the law? Does he even know that that law exists? The answer is no. He keeps making reference to Section 7 in reference to the provisions on joint accounts. It's Section 162 of the Constitution, not Section 7. And just to say that the inquiry is on, by today, invitation letters will be sent to those affected, and they should come and explain. The state has supervisory control or jurisdiction over local government councils, guaranteed under Section 7 of the Nigerian Constitution, and that remains the law. And after 2 months, the report of the investigative panel of inquiry will be submitted to the House of Assembly for further action. But one thing Nigerians will be assured of is that everybody invited will be given fair hearing. And this will be for the good of Edo people, ultimately. And just to say that in the last election, local government funds were used for politics and not for governance. As we speak, no local government chairman has done a single meaningful project. But it is stomach infrastructures that we hear funds meant for the grassroots administration was used for. And that is what this inquiry will expose.
All right. I want to say thank you so much, Mr. Andrew Nwata, for joining us. And of course, Mr. Tor, hopefully we'll get to have more conversations on this so that we can shed more light. We were supposed to be joined by one of the local government council chairmen. He was supposed to join this conversation to make it 3 guests, but unfortunately we do hear he's not able to connect with us. So when he joins us, and also a PDP stalwart, we'll look at this issue clearly from the bird's eye of these other individuals. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us. It's a continued conversation we'd love to have later on. Thanks for your time, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.